Hey guys, this is my prison experience series 1 because I have so much to say. What's up? What's up, everybody? It's your girl Sheila, Promostk, eating good in the neighborhood. We got some mussels. I want mussels. And we got some Sheila's good old Sheila's Creation sauce. If y'all go to my Sheila's Creations way, y'all can get this recipe and check it out because it is awesome, smackalicious, good too. All right, let me get my bib on, y'all. You know I gotta put my bib on because this sauce may be Sheila-licious, but it's also messy-licious too. All right, so I'm gonna bless my food and we'll talk about what the title says. Dear Lord, thank you for this food. Let this food be nourishment to my body. In Christ Jesus I pray. Amen, amen, amen. And this is a high protein because we got mussels. I had put a video out about my experience in prison. And it was an experience in prison. I was not an inmate. I was a worker. I was a supervisor in the mailroom. And I hadn't even thought about doing this video. I hadn't even thought about it until I saw one of my fams, JoJo, do a video about her being a prisoner. And I'm telling you, it brought back memories that I hadn't even thought about. I mean, literally. And all my years of being in that prison just surfaced. Because I didn't know that she had been through all the life experience she had talked about on her video. So all the emotions that start flooding back in me was like, wow. And I felt that I had to tell my story from my perspective on me being eyes that was there. And I must say, it's sad. It really is. And how we want our inmates to be rehabilitated, but we're not rehabilitating them. You're not prepping them for the real world. Some of the prisoners, they're good people. They're actually good people. Just come on, excuse me, hard times. And when you have them come on hard times, that's what they call the beard, okay. The circumstances allow things to happen. You got a lot of people that's in the prison system that they shouldn't even be in there. They're actually innocent, just got caught up. And you have some that should be in there. But my prison experience with my ears and my eyes on the mailroom. I'm gonna talk about, oh, I have so many different things to talk about, and I can't do it in one video. And I know I'm gonna forget some stuff, even from the topic I have for today, but it's pretty much about contraband. How contraband gets into the prisons. And you do have inmates that mean you no good. I'm not gonna say they're all in there to be good. Some are in there just to be mischievous. And they'll sweet talk people into doing things for them, or make the person feel guilty if they don't. Like, what was that? At an all-male prison. And a lot of the people that got caught up were women. They got caught up in the prison system with these inmates. They were either the prisoners' girlfriends, their wives, or somebody that was close to them. Could have even been a parent. But they would persuade them to come and bring certain things that they know they're not supposed to have. And they were doing this because the inmates were doing this because the inmates were trying to survive in these inmate streets, okay? Yeah, I know how we try and do out here in the YouTube streets, but inmate streets. And we had these inmates having these people bring them stuff, whether it's inserted in them, on them, however, and some got caught, and you facing some time. And the inmate's already doing time, so nothing's gonna happen to the inmate. Nothing, literally nothing's gonna happen to the inmate. But that person carrying that stuff in, big mistake. So inmates, they want, and a lot of times they're threatened. The inmates are scared, and they're trying to get stuff in there so that they can be protected. And I'm telling you, it is really sad. You see inmates walking around there where somebody done beat them up. You know they done been beat up. But the inmate will tell you that he failed. He won't rat the other inmate out that beat him up, or inmates that beat him up. There were several different gangs, affiliations where I work. It's like if you weren't part of a gang, you were pretty much by yourself. There was no protection, so you had a lot of people, a lot of inmates that joined the different gangs and got initiated into these gangs so that they can have that protection, so to speak. These things got a lot of beards on them. I'm not used to seeing all these beards. But I felt so sorry for these inmates because they come and get their legal mail, and it's like, where are these officers? I know they saw this man can barely walk, in pain, visibly in pain, visibly can't walk, visibly face beat up. But they go back and then they get another beating. So they wouldn't tell. It's like they'd rather get the beatings for not telling and risk a whole lot of other people beating them too. But I'm telling you, it's sad because it's like these are our family members that are in prison serving their time for crimes that, of course, they did. Figuratively, you know, they did. And then they're being brutalized, pretty much, brutalized. And the inmates are like, who can they tell? Because if they tell, guess what? Beat down time. He's a rat. Beat down time. He's a snitch. But they could send messages to the mailroom anonymously. What went down, what was going on, what was about to happen. And that was our job. That when we got this stuff coming up through the inmates, we made sure we got it in the hands of the warden or assistant warden so they can put the cameras on them and find out what's going on. And the inmates knew they were safe if they got their message to the mailroom, because they knew that we were going to get that message to where it needs to go. And the officers would be instructed to go and get the inmate on something bogus, like taking them to medical or whatever, or moving them to a different dorm. And the inmate would never be returned back there. They'll probably have him under confine for his protection. Because eventually, those inmates that meant him harm is going to find out that he ratted them out. A lot of times they keep them in confine, and they have them shipped to a different facility because they can't put them back on the compound. But they have to stay in confinement, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Confinement for their protection, protective custody, but also they lose. They can't have visitation. They can't go outside and do Rex, you know, because they're in confinement. They didn't do anything wrong, but again, for their protection. Woo. For their protection. So you have some officers that really look out for the inmates. They're not all bad officers, but I'm gonna tell you, the conditions in these prisons are horrific. Inmates bathing in cold water, mold all in the stalls. Oh, I mean, conditions that you wouldn't want to be living in, you know? And just because they did something bad or wrong does not mean they need to be treated like animals. You treat somebody like an animal long enough, y'all know the saying, you treat somebody like an animal long enough, what? they end up turning into an animal. But the prison that my brother was at, those inmates was just straight up cruel. I mean, not inmates, but those officers were just straight up cruel to those inmates. Because even for a while, when my brother had got out of prison, he wouldn't even look at you in the eyes because he was in there, and the officers was so mean to them that they weren't even allowed to even look at the officer. Even when the officer was talking to them, they could not even look at the officer in the face, or they get in trouble. Now, the prison where I worked, excuse me, it wasn't like that. And I worked at 2 private prisons. I worked at, that was closed, at Geo, and I worked at CCA. And they believed in rehabilitating the inmates. They had education classes for them so that when they get out, if they were going to be getting out, they had something to look forward to, and they had programs to assist them. In the private prisons, they're required to have stuff like that. In the regular prisons, no, because they don't have nothing to gain. The private prisons, they do, because the more inmates they have, the more money they get in for those inmates. So they always want a bed. They always want a bed to be occupied, okay? You got a lot of people in prison for too many years than they should be. You got people that look at prisoners differently because they've been in prison. But I say this, that prisoner was just the unlucky one, because there are people out there here in the world now doing horrific crimes, and they're still doing it, just not caught. But they're sitting casting judgment on the inmates that did get caught and that are in the system. But I believe as an officer, if you're an officer, you're there to uphold the rules, not cast anything. Just do your job and go home. A lot of people told me, oh wow, I never knew. You never said anything about working in a prison before. They didn't know. Work is work. Home is home. I saw how everything happened, and I just pray to God that that wasn't for my kids or anybody else that I knew, because you do not want to see your loved one locked up, no matter what type of crime they did. You don't want to see it. You want God to be the judge of their lives, of what they've done. No one should cast down hate, violence, kicking the inmates. And that's another thing. When the inmates are are being violent, you know, of course, the security officer needs to do what he needs to do to subdue the inmate. And even in doing that, there's still protocols. And when you have an officer that takes it upon himself to go above and beyond the realm of his job duty, which means being violent, because you know, you got people out there, whether it's an officer or a police officer or a security officer or a corrections officer, if an inmate got unruly, they take it personal and they get unruly right back with them. And I'm like, just do your job. Just do your job. So there was a lot of investigations going on. If an inmate got bruised or got injured in any type of altercation with an officer, the officer would be suspended. A lot of times the officer would be put in the mailroom. They have to work for me until their investigation period was over. They were cleared. Depending on how horrific the incident was, they may have to be suspended off-site. But if it was a he said, she said type of thing, the inmate would send a grievance. Because you know that's what they do, they send grievances. We have so many days to answer the grievance, or whatever department that the grievance was for. Okay, so that's all that. But that officer would be treated as if he had done something wrong. Whether he did something wrong or not, that officer would be made to feel as if he did something wrong. So sometimes the officers would be like, oh, that's not right. They treating us like we the inmates. They believe the inmates. They believe everything the inmates say. Now this is from the private prison standpoint. We had a lot of officers that felt that because they were private prisons, that the private prisons was favoring the inmates because, you know, hey, the private prisons, those inmates brought money into the prison system. Another bed, another dollar. So a lot of times the inmates was treated better than the officers. And that's why the turnover rate is so high in the prison systems, you know, with the officers. And you have a lot of good officers. You have a lot of good officers in the prison system. And you have a lot of officers that are not good. And they're not good for the prison systems. But, ooh, that was good, y'all. But I do say this. If you guys have loved ones that are locked up in the prison systems, write them, reach out to them, you know, visit them as much as you can. Don't fall prey to doing anything illegal. Because oh my God, there was so much contraband that was trying to get into those inmates. And some was like they were allowed to get books. And the family members or whoever was sending them stuff that was illegal, contraband, would make sure that whatever they were sending them, as far as a book, was approved by the Florida Department of Corrections, which means all we would do is just scan the book if it came from Amazon or whatever book company it came from, and then it would be okay. But us in the mailroom, we had to be even better than that. We had to have eyes. We had to have like x-ray eyes, because we had to look at every corner of these books to make sure that there was no altercations of it being what's the word? Of someone messing with it or trying to take things apart to put things in there. And let me tell you, we have caught so much contraband on stuff that looked like it was supposed to look like. But because we went the extra mile and took the extra effort to check these packages, we were able to find it before it hit the compound. And we put it through the x-ray machine several times. Inmates were only allowed to receive mail through the U.S. Postal Service. No UPS, no FedEx. No. If they got anything through FedEx or UPS, it never even touched inside. They automatically got sent back with the driver. Now, the UPS, the reason why the United States Postal Service, the inmates were allowed to receive mail through them is because they have regulations that they go through and inspections that they go through that UPS and FedEx do not. So when we get suspicious mail, sometimes the post office has it held where they are, and then they call in the police office, the local authorities or whatever, and then they find out who it was going to, and that's how they grasp down on the people that's sending them this stuff. And so a lot of people would send stuff that they knew was contraband, that they were probably aware that it would come back to them in a negative way if they were found out that they were sending it. And so they would use different addresses. And because they would have police officers staked out at their homes at these addresses, and it would be bogus addresses. It would be somewhere out in the boonies where there was no building. So they knew. They didn't care. They were by any means necessary. They were trying to get that contraband into the inmate. And the inmate was aware of this contraband coming in. 9 times out of 10, the inmate was aware. And he'd be looking for that mail. And you'd have people that would come in on visitation. And like I said earlier, they would be hiding stuff in their private areas, in their mouth, any body cavity that they could find, they would hide it. If it was a woman that had extensions or hair, they would try and hide it in their hair, under a wig. But guess what? They looked under wigs too, okay? It was by any means. But you still had some things. I'm not going to say that everything was A-okay, because things did make it to the compound on visitations. Because you had officers that was a little lax in their job, and they weren't as observant, and things got exchanged that shouldn't have got exchanged. And then it was caught later on, either on camera or by the inmates having it. And a lot of things that was contraband was cash money. Cash money in the prisons was considered contraband. Inmates were not allowed to have cash money. So if somebody smuggled them in cash money, then guess what? That's contraband. And they would try to negotiate with other inmates on getting stuff, services or whatever from them with that money. And even with cell phones, they would dissect the cell phone, and the inmates would get a hold of those cell phones. They would use, for contraband, they would use a toothbrush as a knife. They would get that end of the toothbrush and sharpen it so sharp that then becomes a weapon. They were allowed to have certain little razors, and some inmates would put those razors on the tips of those toothbrush handles and use them as shanks. I'm gonna tell you, the inmates had all day. And you know what they say about idle minds? Idle minds is the devil's workshop, and they had idle minds. And you had some good inmates that would send notes to the mailroom and say, such and such has a shank, such and such has a cell phone. And when we get those messages, we give them to the warden, assistant warden, and then we do what they call searches. unexpected searches. And we go through all the department heads. So that's why I say we. We would go through these dorms, okay? We would go through these inmates' properties. And we would find so much contraband. Even contraband we weren't even looking for. We would find contraband. And it wouldn't be where the message that was given to us was, because when an inmate thinks that, someone's gonna find their stuff, they pass it. And they pass it and they pass it. But they'll get the dogs in there. If it's drugs, they'll get the dogs in there. Dogs will be going through, sniffing stuff. I mean, it's sad that inmates feel that they have to do bad in that situation, but they're doing it to survive. That's their only way of survival. And so officers in this situation, a lot of times, I know a lot of officers see these inmates as humans. They do. There's some that don't, but there are some that do. And they'll let inmates keep stuff that they know they're not supposed to have. It may be an extra bar of soap. Anything extra with the inmates is considered contraband. Now, you may have an inmate that loves to read. They're only allowed to have so many books on their property. So you may have a security officer that walks those halls and say, well, he ain't doing nothing but reading a book, so I'm gonna let him have a little extra 5 books. But guess what? When we go through there, we start doing them inspections and start tearing that stuff through, looking through all that stuff, and we find these extra things is being taken. So the officers are not doing that inmate any good, because then the inmate's like, well, officer such and such, you let me have it. Why I can't keep my stuff? FDOC says you can't have it. And I remember when we were doing our little walkthroughs and inspections, the warden would have me on his team, because I don't know what it was about me. I mean, I had like razor eyes, like I could just spot stuff, and I could be walking down the center of the dorms where the inmates were, and I could just be looking up, and I could say contraband. I could be calling the cell numbers out, and these officers will be running to themselves, because the officers knew that these inmates had this stuff. I mean, they had to have known, because it was taped underneath the bunks, and I'm walking in the top bunks. Anything on them top bunks is under them top bunks and not supposed to be there, I'll point them out. And these officers will be running to me, Miss Salter, because that's what I was called back then. Miss Salter, what you got in the report? What did you put in the report? You'll see it when the report comes out, because they knew there were going to be findings, and it was going to be on their watch. So it was just an experience. I mean, I never thought I would ever work in a prison, but the years went by so fast. I mean, 1 year became 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6 years. Wow. And I loved it out there. It was a sense of purpose, because I was changing things around in the mailroom as far as different procedures that we had. I even went with the warden a few times to hearings in different cities, because I had to justify different things that I did in the mailroom and why certain rules was held to a standard with FDOC and how I had to follow those rules. And it was an experience. I have so many avenues that I can go through. 6 years is a long time to be in a mailroom and to see all the stuff that I saw. So I'm going to end this video today, but I'm going to bring you guys more, because there's so much more. This just scratches the surface of what I've seen being in the mailroom. The ears, as we would go out on the compound and stand at the gate, and the inmates would come to us with any type of questions they may have. Different private prisons had different procedures with the department heads interacting with the inmates. So yeah, I look forward to telling you guys my experiences. And I had not even, as I said earlier, I had not even thought about even telling my story. It's like I just forgot about those 6 years. You know, it's like it just out of sight, out of mind. And by me listening to JoJo's story about her being an inmate, I know how inmates were looked at in this all-male prison. And these men were made to feel like they were beneath the earth. They were the gum under your shoes. And of course, you had a lot of minorities there. You had a lot of minorities. And a strong black man should never feel that way. A strong any man shouldn't be made to feel like they were in 2nd grade, like they don't have sense that God gave a billy goat. Okay, so I want to touch some more on this. If you guys allow me and you guys want to hear more, put some topics down at the bottom and say, hey, Promo STK, let me hear more about some of your experiences. I mean, because I can go any and everywhere in my experience there, because we had to walk perimeters, we caught officers sleeping, we've caught officers having sex with inmates. So many different avenues I can go down with this. So I'm going to end it now. I appreciate you guys being here. And if you stayed to the end, please put a comment below and say, yes, I want to hear more about your experience in the mailroom. Yes, I want to hear more about your prison experience, and or whatever topic you want to hear about or me express more interest in. Okay? Because there was a lot of stuff going on in my 6 years in prison. Thank you guys. Love you. And don't forget to subscribe, share this out. Someone needs to hear it. If it's just one person, someone needs to hear it. And I appreciate the fact that you stayed with me this long to hear my story. Love you guys.